Hello and welcome to Media MD. I'm Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot and Reuben.
And so on Media MD, each fortnight we prescribe each other a piece of media or pop culture that the other person has somehow missed.
Yes. And so what I'm bringing this week is another science fiction TV show.
Oh boy, here we go.
But it's one that's near and dear to my heart, and I mean, I don't want to oversell it, but it's definitely where TV peaked.
TV's gone downhill after that, for sure.
And this is Stargate, the franchise Stargate. So, I mean, I'm not going to force you to sit down and watch all 354 episodes.
Yeah, so let's talk
movies.
about this. You say the franchise Stargate.
Yeah.
When you say that, it comes to my head, there was probably a TV show called Stargate.
Yes.
What is Stargate? Tell me the story of Stargate.
So it started as a movie. And it was like a one-off movie.
When was this?
1994.
Okay.
So it was by Roland Emmerich. He's actually, like, I quite like him as a filmmaker.
What has he done?
So he did Independence Day.
Oh, I see.
That 1998 Godzilla one, Day After Tomorrow, 2012. So
he
does like
kind of big budget
popcorn movies.
Yeah,
He calls them popcorn movies because I remember watching an interview with him one time and somebody was like, "Does it ever bother you that all the critics like hate your movies because you know they all do terribly critically?" And he's like, "No, I don't make my movies for critics. My movies are like you can sit down, switch your brain off, and just watch shit blow up."
And if you're making movies like that, it's good that you know what you're doing.
Exactly, he knows what he's doing.
Because he can embrace it for sure.
And he does. I mean, if you've seen any of those most recent movies, and so. I would actually say Stargate is possibly my least favorite one of his films. It's not bad. It's just it's very average. But what it did was encouraged some separate guys. They sort of watched the movie, came up with this idea for a TV show. And so then 3 years later, in 1997, we got Stargate SG-1, which is the name of the first show.
Okay. So in my head, I'm picturing... I guess I'm just picturing Star Trek.
It's very, particularly the show is very much inspired by those original Star Treks. And especially it came out just before I think a lot of the new Star Trek shows came out. But it's that very much, they go into all these alien worlds, which all sort of look like they're Vancouver.
They probably are.
And they are. And they're interacting with wacky looking alien races a lot.
They're interacting with wacky races?
Yep. So there's just lots of that sort of stuff, but it's unique in its own way. And I think I once read an interview with one of the writers and he was saying the reason the franchise was so successful, and I totally believe this is true, is because, they've got this Stargate, which I'm sure you've seen. It's like that ring.
Yeah, I think I've seen parodies of it in like Rick and Morty and stuff.
And so it's a ring and there's like a blue wormhole in it. And so like what he was saying is it's great for writers because you've got this sort of home base of like they call it Stargate Command in the show, and that's where they go through the Stargate. And then the writers can put whatever the fuck they want on.
It can be anything.
On the other side. So it's like this door to anywhere. So for the writers,
like
it's
Twilight Zone-esque, just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Black Mirror or something.
But at the same time, the series is quite enjoyable because everything ties together because you still have this home base and the characters are the same. So as opposed to something like Black Mirror where everything's completely standalone.
Yeah.
It's like they also do a very good job of having episodes that are entirely set on the base. Like maybe something comes back through the Stargate.
Okay.
And, so you really get a sense of like this is their home in this base on Earth, but then also the writers can just have an episode where it's just like, and then whatever is on the other side of the Stargate.
And then they go to the upside down planet. Yeah. Everyone's upside down and
so I think there's one very early on where like all the aliens on that planet are made out of crystals. And then if you touch the crystals, the alien's consciousness enters your brain and shenanigans ensue, and it's
like a body swap episode.
Yeah, exactly. And so they cover everything.
So I want to ask, with these Stargates, do they go to other parts of the same universe or different dimensions?
No, so it's traveling through space. So there's Stargates on other planets. There's a few episodes where due to like crazy wacky science reasons, they accidentally get transported through time or into a parallel universe. But like the Stargates were designed for space travel. Okay. It's like instantaneous space.
So is there ever anything where they go through a Stargate to another place and they do something there that has effects that means people from that place go through, through a Stargate, but just travel through space to come to them in some way.
That's basically the plot of season 1.
Cool.
Basically, the pilot episode is very much they poke the sleeping dragon, and the rest of season 1 is essentially that there's this fleet moving back across the galaxy to come and like ruin their day. And so they're sort of trying to use the Stargate to get everything sorted out. So yeah, that's an element, is like the Stargate network represents the way to instantaneously travel, but then all the other alien races tend to have these slow moving ships. And so it's like...
So how come, I assume it's humans who have the Stargates, right?
I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but the Stargates were sort of seeded by this controlling race. Who spread humans around the galaxy as a sort of slave race.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's essentially why there are humans who apparently speak English on every planet. That's just sort of when you end up giving them. Yeah, like that. That's one. They sort of address it.
Enough.
They address it a bit in season 1, and then after that, they're like, just.
So do the other races all speak English as well, or?
Yes. Some of them are like, they have their own language, but they speak English to humans.
Because humans are the slave race that are kind of across the galaxy. Okay. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, so English sort of becomes this common tongue again.
At least they tried to address it rather than just having all these wacky space aliens speaking the same language.
I think they try less and less as the series goes on. I think you'll notice they'll try at the start. And then if you end up making it to like later on in the show...
So 296 or whatever.
Yeah, like they stop. Well, so actually there's only 214 episodes
of
SG-1, and then they have 2 movies. But what actually happened is at the end of season 7, they spun off a new one called Stargate Atlantis.
Does it play back into SG-1?
Yeah, and so they had like crossover events and everything as well. It's kind of similar to the Flash and Arrow, very comparable to those. So it's essentially about a base they form in another galaxy. They find like a new network of Stargates that's sort of separate to the current network. Right, so they form a base
frequency.
Yeah, basically. And so that's probably a better series in general. It only goes for 5 seasons, but the first 2 seasons of SG-1 are quite bumpy. It takes them a while to sort of find the rhythm and the feel of the show, whereas Atlantis has the benefit of starting in season 7 of SG-1. It just sort of jumps straight into it.
So how long is each episode?
It's the 40-minute episodes.
Okay, and you said that each Stargate can only remain open for 42 minutes, right?
38 minutes, yeah. So that's something they establish very early on in the show, but it's a great mechanic. So the longest a Stargate can stay open is 38 minutes. In fact, this show loves countdown timers. Like, you'll see, it's like the most overused trope is just like, in almost any situation, they'll be on some alien planet, and like the only thing, it's like, oh, there's a bomb. It's like,
oh my god, no.
Well, it's like, oh, there's a bomb. It's like, can you defuse it? It's like, no. It's like, what do you know about it? It's going to go off in 22 minutes. And you look at your clock, and there's like 23 minutes left in the episode. It's like,
well, at least they time it out properly.
So that, like, it's probably the most overused mechanic in the show is countdowns to something going off. But somehow, I mean, I love it. Still works. And I think, this show, for me, like, the reason I'd say, I think science fiction TV peaked around this time, because this is when a lot of, like, these Star Trek shows that are quite big, and Farscape is another one. And it's sci-fi that didn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
My issue at the moment with science fiction TV is you've either got, like, things like Battlestar Galactica style. There's another show on at the moment called The Expanse, which is very good, but they're, like, very serious, very draining. You sort of need to be very into them. Like, it's sort of the same with, like, Breaking Bad, even going out of sci-fi. So
it's not popcorn TV.
No, right? So Stargate, I think. But then the other shows you have at the moment are these shows like The Flash, and like The Flash is great, but like it's pretty corny. Like Stargate's almost in the middle. I'd say like Stargate is the best of both worlds. There's enough to take seriously, but then it's also kind of ridiculous and self-aware. Stargate, in my opinion, has the best balance of like this. It's serious enough that you want to keep watching and see where these characters are going, but it's not so serious that like it drains you and it's very depressing. Like the concept, like these days everything's like super serious and has to be depressing and very real.
It's either really gritty or really fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Stargate has a good balance.
All right.
And I don't know, I wanted to bring it up now because I think, so what's happening now is they're actually doing a new movie.
Okay.
I'm very depressed about this.
Yes.
Because it's going back to Roland Emmerich, the guy who made the original movie.
Right.
And he's actually stated multiple times he hates the show.
Jesus.
So he's planning on rebooting based on his movie. Because his movie was going to be a trilogy.
Oh, so they're just they're just pulling a Star Wars and scrapping all the extended universe.
Yes, essentially. That's basically exactly what they're doing, which is a shame because I think myself and most of the people who like Stargate would argue that the movie's really average.
And the TV show.
And, Roland Emmerich should stick to making Independence Day sequels because that was actually a good movie that he made.
Well, I mean, he's doing that as well, right?
He is. And so I think the Stargate movie is actually dependent on Independence Day 2 doing well. It's like a deal that if Independence Day 2 makes money, he gets to make Stargate. So
you heard it here first. 2. Don't go see Independence Day.
Yes, so that is why I personally am hoping Independence Day 2 is a flop.
You're going to pay to not see it multiple times.
So I guess the franchise has sort of died off. I think the last show got cancelled in 2010 or 11.
Cancelled before its time. Only 300 episodes.
Yeah. Well, the last show only went for 2 seasons.
Right. Oh, 2 seasons is
it's
still
okay,
a fair
but
amount.
It was unfortunate. It was unfortunate because you had the first half of season 1 of this new show was pretty terrible. It came out just after Battlestar Galactica started, and they tried to do the super serious Battlestar Galactica thing. It was very different to all the previous Stargate. The first half of season 1 was actually pretty terrible. Then it got better for the first half of season 2 and the second half of season 1. And then the second half of season 2 was actually, it just picks up and gets really good.
And then it gets cancelled.
And then it got cancelled. But it was very reasonable because almost nobody was watching because the first season was so average. So it was kind of unfortunate because it was very justifiable. It wasn't like Firefly where you could argue that it was because they ruined it. It was very much the people who made it's fault, because the first half of season 1 was so terrible. So that was just kind of a shame because it kind of got cancelled. You're like, but it just got good. Everyone
as soon as you start getting invested,
everyone needs to come back now. It was. I guess it was a bit like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 1 was so average. You could have excused everyone for never coming back.
Yeah.
So that was just a bit of a shame.
But luckily we did.
Yeah, exactly.
So, before I agree to come back in 2 weeks after watching all 304 episodes of 3 movies...
I understand that is an unreasonable expectation.
How many... Could I even do that in 2 weeks' time if I was watching it 24/7?
Actually, I think I did the math on this a while ago. I don't have it on me, but it's like 12 or 13 days worth of content non-stop.
Ooh, so I could just get in there.
So theoretically, if you hopped up on anti-sleep medication,
drink as much coffee as I can. Yeah.
But no, all I really want to prescribe to you today is I think you should probably watch the original movie.
First movie.
Even though it's kind of average, just because it really sets the scene. And you should know a fair bit gets retconned.
From the original movie?
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
okay.
for instance, they establish in the original movie that there's this alien race that, parasitically hops into humans to take control of their bodies, and you get a shot of them in the movie, to see what they look like, and then you'll notice very quickly that they look completely different in the show. So then I've got here as well the DVD. They redid the pilot episode. Wow. So it's called Children of the Gods, and so they
How long is the pilot episode? Why does it
an hour and a
DVD?
half. So the reason they gave it its own DVD is it's actually a remaster they did after the show got cancelled. So they updated all the CGI to match up with the CGI from the later seasons.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. And they recut it, redid everything. So it's sort of...
So that's the best way to watch.
I think so, because it doesn't interfere with the old ones, but it should give you a much better sense of what the show would feel like later on. And then I've just got seasons 1 and 2 here, but I'm also going to give you a list... I originally went to make a list of episodes that you should watch, like a best of from the first 2 seasons, but it ended up more becoming a list of episodes you should just skip because I couldn't pick that many that I thought were skippable. So I've just sort of, I'll send you a list of basically the ones that it's like, if you're not really feeling it, you should probably just go ahead.
We can publish that list as well in case anyone's following along at home.
Yeah. So that, there's sort of the ones that are standalone and in They don't sort of fit in with later canon either. Like the first season kind of stumbles around trying to find what the rules for the canon should be.
But I assume there are some really good standalone episodes that you want me to watch as well.
Yeah, there are. Like I could probably make a list of like 6 or 7 that I would say are must watches, but then you'd be missing. Generally, the best ones are these ones that are really integral to the sort of overarching universal plot that's going on. Which is essentially this war with the parasitic aliens.
Okay, cool. So I'll come back in 2 weeks, a lot of coffee down my throat, and we'll see how much I've gone through.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and we are back. How long has it been?
Just over 2 weeks.
Okay, so let's start off with how much Stargate did I get through?
Yes.
So I got through the movie.
Good. That's a good start.
Good start. And then I guess we're going to have to get into this later. I finished season 1, and season 1 ends halfway through an episode, essentially.
Yeah, so Stargate does a lot of this. They'll always have a 2-parter, and it's the last episode of one season, the first episode of the next season.
Well, you say 2-parter, but it was actually a 3-parter, because the first part of this 3 parts was just a clip show to recap before the big finale.
That's why I said it was a 2-parter.
Then part 2 is the last episode of season 1, and then part 3 is the first episode of season 2. So it tricked me into starting season 2 a bit.
And they do that a lot in the middle of the seasons as well. I don't know if they did that in season 1, but often it'll be like, because back when it was airing, you get that break over Christmas.
Yeah.
And so they did the same thing. It was like episode 10 or 11 would be the first part. And so they loved like the cliffhangers were in the middle of big 2-parters. It was pretty rough.
Yeah, so I started season 2. I think I got up to season 2, episode 4.
Okay. But you didn't skip episodes. So originally I had that list of episodes I thought was skippable, but you wanted the pure experience.
Yeah, I started watching some of the bad episodes, and then I was like, I should be watching these because otherwise I'm going to get an artificially inflated view of Stargate.
That's fair.
And we pride ourselves here at Media MD on just and fair criticism.
I mean, I would argue that the episodes that you were told to skip were the ones that don't reflect what the show later becomes. But
see, that's an interesting point that you should have told me before I watched the shitty episodes, so I could justify skipping them.
But yeah, because I think I said this quite a bit 2 weeks ago. The show got off to a bumpy ride at the start, and it took a while to settle into what its mythos and feel was.
It did. It really did. And we'll get into some of my problems with the show later, but first let's quickly cover the movie.
Okay, yeah.
There isn't really much to talk about here, really. No, it's an alright movie.
I said it was average, and I stand by that.
The plot is basically that this US military branch has found this mysterious piece of thing that doesn't match the architecture in Egypt that it was found in, and so they bring in this linguist. He's a linguist to decipher the symbols on it.
Yeah, I mean,
he's like an anthropo-linguist.
It's really a statement on how desperate they've become that they're getting this like crackpot guy who thinks the pyramids were landing pads for aliens.
His theory is like, the Egyptians didn't build the pyramids, blah blah blah. Basically, the kind of stuff that you'd hear in conspiracy theories nowadays and just laugh off. But they are desperate, so they go to him, and he cracks it very quickly. In fact, there's even a line in the movie which is like, "You cracked in 1 week what took my team 2 years couldn't do," or whatever. And he opens it up, and it's a portal to this Egyptian-y planet, and they go there, and there's aliens, they fight these aliens, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the sci-fi in it isn't really, it's just a device for them to get to this other planet, really. It could just be these military guys go into this, like, ancient, like, tribe on Earth. It wouldn't really make that much of a difference. And then there's these other people that are, like, trying to hunt down the tribe or whatever. But in this, it's aliens in space instead of...
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
They don't really need the Stargate at all.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need the whole movie at all.
That's fair. But it did spawn the TV show, and then in the TV show, they come back and they retcon some stuff, like... They changed the actors. Obviously, MacGyver replaces one of them.
And so that's actually... it's a thing... I can't remember which way it is. So in the show, he's Colonel O'Neill... with one L.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, it's two L's. And that's because Richard Dean Anderson the actor was like, I don't want to be playing this other guy's character. I want him to be like my own character. And he was sort of the celebrity that they were getting to be in the show.
Right.
So he sort of
MacGyver.
Yeah. So he got to sort of decide things like that.
He's still the same character.
I know.
And he's referred to as the same character. He just doesn't.
But he changed the spelling, so it's better now. I mean, I don't know. But that's...
See, this is the thing as well. They do retcon... Because in the movie, they obviously didn't have a lot of... They flesh out the characters as much as they can, but they don't really have that much time to flesh them out. And so, one example is O'Neill in the movie is very... He's a military guy, and he's very kind of no-nonsense. But then in the show, he's a bit more humorous, and he has a love of astronomy as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is just taken from, like, one scene in the movie where he has a telescope on his roof or something.
And I think, I mean, that probably comes down to the difference between having a movie and having a show. Because when you have a show, like, you've got to have a character who's got more depth and is more well-rounded. Like, whereas in the movie, you can get away with them just being, like, no-nonsense macho military man. Like, that'd get pretty boring after a few episodes of a show.
Yes. Well, let me give my rating on the movie.
Yeah.
I'd give it a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. I think it's just kind of a mediocre movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not bad, it's not good, it's just...
See, yeah, I would have given it, like, a 5.
So basically, they bring back the two main characters from the movie.
Yes. And they
introduce two new characters. One is a female, because they didn't have any female characters in the movie.
Yep.
And so she's, like, kind of a doctor-y... she's kind of a cross between military and intelligence, right?
Yeah, but she's... Like, in terms of how she functions in most episodes, she's like the scientist. Like, really. Yeah. So she's the one with all the science knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, she's like Daniel Jackson is like the super nerdy ancient culture expert, and then, you know, she's like halfway in between, sort of. And then they have one other character who is a reformed alien warrior.
Yeah.
Who is called Teal'c.
Yes.
And I can't remember exactly where the apostrophes are in his name.
Between the L and the C. Right.
So it's Teal apostrophe C. Like the colour teal. Okay. And he's very deadpan. He's like the character that they all play off because he doesn't know anything about Earth culture. And so he'll be like, they'll say like, oh, this is an expression in Earth. And he'll be like, crossing bridge, expression. And then he'll use it. It's very much
But
that
then on the other
trope.
hand, oftentimes when they go out to an alien culture, he'll have already encountered them and get to explain.
Yes. So he kind of knows about other races in the galaxy because he, as part of when he was a villain,
he was traveling around.
He travelled around and like fought these cultures.
Yeah,
basically.
so he's a really good plot device. And I mean, throughout the show, that never sort of really changes. Like, he's probably the one.
He never really adjusts.
He's one of the characters who I think changes the least throughout the 10 seasons of the show. So
we've talked about the general structure of the show.
Yeah.
Let me talk about my problems with it.
Sure.
We'll get problems because overall I did enjoy it, even though season 1 is very rocky. Yeah. There are a lot of episodes which I would say are pretty bad or pretty boring. But there are also episodes that you can really feel that this is going to develop into a show. So I'll probably keep watching it.
Okay. Cool.
But let's talk about the problems. One, every planet speaks English. It's very frustrating. They do things where it's like
because they use like colloquialisms as well.
Yeah.
That's the one that really gets me. It's like they'll use modern scientific terms, and it's like there's no way you people were seeded 5,000 years ago with the word atom.
Yeah, I want to talk about one specific episode, the episode The Nox, where they find this other culture that seems very primitive, but is actually very advanced and has just rejected like modern trappings. They're kind of like Amish races, sort of, even though there is a segment of them which also is very technological, revealed at the end. But what happens is, at the start, this Nox culture doesn't speak English, but because they're so advanced and so smart, they are easily able to figure out English just from a few sentences that one of the main characters say.
Isn't it also implied that they're psychically...
They are psychic as well, yes. They have a couple of magic powers. And then for the remainder, they all speak English with a very obvious American accent. Especially there's a kid, Nox, who just speaks English with like a complete American accent. And he doesn't even try and be like, I am speaking English. It's just
I think the best example is actually one that comes in so by about season 7, one of the new big bad like powerful Goa'ulds in the galaxy is Baal. Mm-hmm. And he's played by this Kiwi actor. Sorry, no, South African. Mm. So he has this really strong South African accent, and it's like never addressed by anyone.
Why?
There's just this one Goa'uld walking around with like a really heavy South African accent, and it's kind of cool. It's like one of the coolest things about his character because it's just such like a charming accent.
Yeah.
But like
it did frustrate me that everyone speaks, or they try and be like, we have our own random phrases which we just inject. Like there's one character who will just say like "Shamwayala" for all kinds of random. As his expression.
It's very late 90s sci-fi, though. Like all that
it's
stuff.
kind of... every time they got to a new planet, I'd be like, so are these guys going to speak English? And then they'll say a couple of words in a different language, and you'd be like, oh, and then they speak English. It's like, okay. So yeah, that kind of got a bit frustrating.
all the different words for Stargate.
Oh yeah,
Chapai.
Chapai.
I think
is
they
one of the
introduced
common ones.
a bunch of others.
Just a more actual gripe with the show, because I can forgive the English thing.
Yeah.
The characters seem to change whether they're good or bad at their jobs on a whim. So there are a lot of cool things where it's like they have like anti-contamination procedures when people come back through the gate and forced medical screens that they kind of show off, and they are smart in a lot of ways, and then in some ways they're also very stupid. Like people just eat random things they find on planets, and they'll just like bring back viruses. About half the episodes are someone has brought back a virus or been replaced, and we just have to deal with that.
Yeah, there's also a lot of like we have the rules and these protocols, and then it's like, yeah, but if we don't let them back through the gate now, against protocol, they're going to die. And he's like, oh, I just have a feeling I'm going to do it. And then it normally
works out.
It normally works out, but it's like, no, that just means you're shit at your job.
Yeah, you're bad at your job. And there's
You
a lot
should
of
have
these
done
where
that.
it's just like, in some situations, someone will try and take command, like an alien who's come back through will try and like take over this thing, and there'll be all these systems in place to stop them. And so there's one episode where there's like one of these Goa'uld or something who can like make men do her bidding.
Oh,
and so,
Hathor.
Hathor, exactly. That's the name of the episode, I think.
That one actually gets retconned a fair bit.
Yeah, because she's taking over the base, and she has basically control of all the men on the base, and it's still hard for her to take over the base, right?
Yeah.
They still kind of stop her. And then there's other episodes where there's like a single character who doesn't even have any magical powers, and they're just able to kind of take over the base and escape without any of these.
Yeah.
It's just like changes whether people can... Their protocols kind of adjust based on the plot, and it's kind of frustrating in some situations.
Yeah. I think that's probably an aspect that doesn't change too much in the show throughout all
that frustrated me a bit, but yeah. And one more thing I want to talk about is just the kind of general concepts of the episodes. I don't know if it's just a season 1 thing, but they do a lot of... I was expecting it more to be like Twilight Zone-ish, where they have these concepts and play them out, but it's more like we have a bit of sci-fi and then it just gives way to very human drama as opposed to sci-fi. And there are a couple of episodes which go against that. There's one where the entire crew gets replaced by robots of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Which was the first episode which I really thought like tackled a complicated sci-fi issue in an interesting way. And I really liked that episode because of it. But then there are ones where it's like there's an episode where O'Neill goes to a different planet and touches a crystal, and he gets replaced by a crystal version of him.
Yeah.
And characters getting replaced or brain invaded. It happens all the time. But then that just becomes a backstory episode about O'Neill and not really about the sci-fi concept in a weird way.
I think that's actually something that happens a lot in the series. Like, that's not going to change too much, especially because a lot of the civilizations they're meeting, like...
humans.
Humans and, like, technologically... held back ones. So yeah, like you'll get those episodes where it's advanced aliens, and that'll tackle a bit more like sci-fi, but a lot of it comes down to that Daniel Jackson, like it's more about an exploration of humanity and people as opposed to the sci-fi. So I think that's something that's actually sort of fairly standard, and that's what the show's about. And a lot of the show also addresses religion's place in society. Like that's a big theme of SG-1 in particular.
Yes, because the Goa'uld, these conquering aliens, have placed themselves as gods. They're very egotistical, and they want people to revere them as gods.
And then, and as the show develops, they find benevolent races who have also decided that they're gods because it's just the easiest way to manage people. Fair enough. And then, and then the Goa'uld actually get defeated because they thought the show was going to get cancelled at one point. So they
beat the Goa'uld.
They wrapped up the whole Goa'uld thing, and then it got renewed again. So they introduced bad guys from a different galaxy.
Sorry, we're saying Goa'uld. The correct pronunciation is Goa'uld. There are 2 apostrophes in there, I think.
They sort of give up on that. Eventually,
it just gets too hard to say.
The humans just say Goa'uld. I think Teal'c is probably the only one who, by the end of the series, is still saying Goa'uld.
Because Teal'c, we should explain a bit more, is one of these members of a slave race for the Goa'uld.
Yes, so they're augmented humans that live longer and better fighters, and so he's one of them.
Yes, and he defects to try and free his people from Goa'uld slave ownership.
Being a member of a warrior slave race, he doesn't have a huge sense of humor or any of that, and he's culturally unaware of his.
But he is very strong.
Very strong.
Supposedly. Well, he uses that strength a couple of times. Most of the times he just shoots things with his alien stuff.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's normally the biggest gripe I get when I try to introduce people to this show is like you've got these super advanced Goa'uld, and like the best thing they can equip their men with is that like
the
wonky
Goa'uld
staff
are pretty
weapon.
weak for a super advanced conquering. The end of season 1 has the Goa'uld get to Earth and try and take over Earth.
Yeah,
and it kind of there's a weird thing where one of the characters, Daniel Jackson, goes into a mirror universe where the Goa'uld are already doing this, and so that's how he kind of learns their plan when he gets back to his Earth. But it's a weird disconnect between all the Goa'ulds we see are like all the times they come up against the Goa'uld, they'll use their stuff and they'll shoot a couple of times, and it's kind of easy to avoid or shoot them. And then at the end, they've got all these massive warships and all this crazy technology. And I would be angry at it if the show didn't know as well that that's what happens, because one of the other subplots in this season finale is their base is being like evaluated for how much over budget they're going.
Yeah.
And so this senator comes in and he's saying stuff like, you're saying the Goa'uld are this massive threat and they're attacking, but every time you fought them, you've escaped so easily and there have been no casualties. And it's like, that's a good point, actually. Why are they so weak?
The show does a really good job. This is one of the first shows that I really watched that did that thing where on their 100th episode, they had like a celebratory episode. So like Supernatural does it as well.
Supernatural did it, yeah.
And so what the premise of the 100th episode is that there was a guy who sort of, they had to wipe his memory. It was like a previous episode, but he's subconsciously starting to remember things about the Stargate. He ends up becoming a television producer and producing a show called Wormhole Extreme, which is about people who go through the wormhole. And so
that's exactly what Supernatural did.
Yeah, exactly. And so the whole premise of the episode is SG-1 get tasked to basically go in and check on what's on the show and just to make sure, because do
they get hired as actors?
No, so they're hired as like Air Force consultants, because SG-1 actually had Air Force consultants like hired full time. So they were members of the Air Force whose job was to make sure that the Air Force was portrayed accurately in the show.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So they basically took that idea and put it in the show. And it's just a really funny, like, self-referential
episode.
And I like that. And they have that one thing where the guy who's playing Colonel O'Neill in Wormhole Extreme is sort of like, I don't get it. Why don't the aliens wear camo? Like, they wear all this shiny armor, they're so easy to see. And Colonel O'Neill,
wear, like, huge snake heads as well. It's like,
Colonel O'Neill's just like, maybe that's why they keep losing. And it's just so those and they do it again for their 200th episode where Wormhole Extreme is being cancelled, but it's getting a movie because that's what was happening to the show at the time. That was their last season, and so they were planning their movie.
That's good.
And those two episodes are really funny.
I like that. We talked in the first part of this episode how it kind of toes the line between too serious and too
and having fun.
Yeah, exactly. It has fun, but it also knows when to get serious. And I like that it is able to know. It makes for a good show that they know what they are doing wrong and that they can kind of play with it in a fun way, for sure.
Yeah. I think one of the other lines they have in Wormhole Extreme is so they introduce in the last part of season 1. They have the Zat gun, and it's one shot stuns,
two shots, 2 kills, 3
disintegrates. And they pitch that in Wormhole Extreme, and one of the other guys is like, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." One of the things you will notice is the show suffers a lot from like tech creep. It's a bit like you know Dragon Ball Z, how like it was just like
it's like my power level's 9,000, well mine's 10,000.
It's like in one episode it's a big thing that somebody's power level's over 1 million, and then like 20 episodes later it's like, unless you're over 50 million, like you're just worth fighting. The Stargate follows a bit with that as well. So like by season 10, like Earth has this powerful fleet of like warships of its own design. With like all sorts of crazy new technology that you haven't even been introduced to yet. And we start to become a powerful force in the galaxy, and that was part of the reason why the spin-offs were quite good, because they put us in a different galaxy and it's isolated from Earth. So it sort of forces that tech creep back down.
Yeah, and that's a good idea, I think.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're running pretty long already, but before we finish up, let's talk about some of the good episodes and some of the bad episodes.
Yes.
So I'm going to say the worst episode is part 1 of the 3-part finale, because it's just a clip show that is... I mean, it's nothing.
It's basically a clip show. I think it's very hard to do a good clip show.
I think I would say it's impossible, and that's why I'm glad that clip shows have stayed in the 90s TV shows where they belong. Kind of in anime, I guess, is the other place where they happen.
Well, yeah, I mean... So one of the things I haven't really talked about is Stargate actually has like a season formula. And so you might notice this if you
the clip show is part of the formula.
Yeah, but it's like episode 18 to 19 of almost every season up to about 7 or 8 is a clip show.
That's terrible.
And like I said, there's that thing where there's always a cliffhanger between the mid-season two-parter and the finale. And then,
so the frustrating things are not just from the first season; they carry on.
Not all of them. Yeah, the clip show one sticks around for budgetary reasons, I assume.
Now, speaking of clip shows, not Supernatural. Community did a clip show, right? Yeah, they did a good clip show because their clip show was clips that weren't from the actual show.
Yeah,
that's right.
So I don't know if I really count that as a proper clip show.
I feel like it was a subversion of a clip show.
It was.
You can't do a proper clip show well, can you?
It's a way to catch people up who haven't followed season 2.
Maybe
closely.
It's because we watch TV shows in order and we don't just watch random episodes, which might have happened with Stargate once or twice.
Like when this was airing in the 90s, like the only way to watch it was on TV, and you're watching it once a week. It was probably more beneficial if you're marathoning it on DVD.
I don't know. Even then, I feel like. Anyway, putting the clip show aside, some of the other bad episodes. There's one which is always brought up as possibly the worst episode, which is called Emancipation.
Yeah,
which is just it's kind of like it's like Feminism the episode, but not done in a good way. No, just done in a boring way where it's like all men are evil, all women are cool, and
I like my biggest issue with that episode is really it's the first episode after the pilot because even the episode before is an extension. Yeah. So this is really your first taste of what individual episodes are going to be like, and I think it's the worst one they ever did. They really sort of they take that message, which is and just shove it down.
The premise is that. They've got this culture where men do everything and women have to...
They're basically concubines and housewives.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're traded. They're traded like money.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's about this female character, the female recurring character, Samantha Carter, proving herself as a woman. And it's just... It's so beaten into your head.
It comes across as really forced. Like the problem is the message doesn't actually come through. Yeah. Because it's so poorly executed, basically.
Anyway, putting that disaster aside, what are some of the other bad episodes? I gave each episode an individual rating.
So I think there's one not long after that one, the brief candle one.
Yes,
so that's the one
that
where
one got a 6 out of 10.
Colonel O'Neill kisses a girl on a planet.
He sleeps with her.
Oh, okay.
He sleeps with her.
Oh,
it's very heavily implied that
it was on Showtime back then. That's right.
And this is another. This is HBO. This is another example of them not having any good procedures or not following their procedures for not contaminating other worlds. You should not sleep with a random alien race.
You don't know what STIs they're going to
be. Yeah, you don't know what they could have, and this is already established as a place where everyone's already acting a bit weird anyway, and he still is just like, no, whatever, it'll be fine.
She's hot.
I'm a dude. She's hot. She's into it. This is another thing that happens a lot in Stargate. Characters seem to get unintentionally married to each other all the time.
Yes.
And this happens in this episode, and then he wakes up after sleeping with this girl, and she's like, now you're my husband. And he's like, what?
What?
Say what? And then the camera circles in onto his face, and he's just like shrugging. So that's a bad episode. Oh, God. There are a couple of ones. I've given each of the episodes a rating. I'm going to say some of the good episodes quickly.
Sure.
One of the episodes I really liked was the one I mentioned before where they were replaced with robots.
Yeah.
There was an episode that it was called The Core Eye, which is
that's one where Teal'c goes on trial, right?
Because he's an ex-villain. He goes on trial, and this is a good episode because it really hammers home the fact that Teal'c was
a really bad guy,
and he accepts that, and it's a very interesting episode. There was one called what else? There was one called Solitudes, where they're trapped on the ice planet.
Yeah,
and it turns out it's.
That one's really good.
Right?
I watched the making of on that one, and it was really interesting because one of their writers was basically known for being able to write episodes where basically the whole episode takes place in one room with 2 people, and it was still interesting.
That was a really
and that's exactly
episode.
what it was. It was a bottle episode that was really.
So basically, Carter and O'Neill get trapped on an ice planet with a Stargate that they can't activate, and they keep trying to activate the Stargate, and it doesn't work. And it turns out the reason it doesn't work is because they're trying to dial in between Stargates on Earth, and for that reason they can't.
So that was
you can't call your own phone from your own house. You get a busy signal. And basically, what ends up happening is they were in Antarctica and they get rescued. But it's a very good episode, and there's a very good moment where O'Neill is dying, and he mistakes Carter because they have a budding romance. He mistakes Carter for his ex-wife, and calls her by his ex-wife's name, and she plays into it, and it's a really like weirdly sentimental and also creepy moment, which I thought landed really well. The finale is great, and then there is the episode where Daniel Jackson goes to the alternate Earth that is being attacked by the Goa'uld, and everyone is basically, at the end of it, everyone dies and sacrifices themselves so that he can get back through the Stargate and potentially save the other Earth. Yeah. Which is a pretty brutal...
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that episode, but it's more because I have a personal distaste of the parallel universes episodes.
Universe trope, yeah.
But it's my least favorite like sci-fi thing, because what annoys me is if there's these infinite realities where every outcome has happened, that sort of makes all of the events quite trivial.
Well,
because in every episode...
It still matters to the people who are living those
but
events.
it's quite arbitrary which people we're following, right? Because every decision, every outcome is so... Like, it's more just a matter of, like, the writers have just arbitrarily decided which Earth we're sticking with.
People who survive. It's kind of like there's I think it's Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead. He's talked about how Rick and his group seem to fluke their way through survival in The Walking Dead show a lot. And he says that this is because there are a lot of stories where people die in the zombie apocalypse, but we're following the group of people who survive.
Well, I mean, that's that old thing. It's like, it's so crazy that the main character in your TV show survived this long. It's like, well, maybe that's why they're the main character.
Yeah, exactly.
But
if we followed another character,
it would be the other way around.
Show, exactly. I will bring up one final criticism of the show, which I forgot to bring up before, is that a lot of the times, because the show is sometimes serious and sometimes light, they will do things where they threaten the death of the characters a lot, and they threaten all these things that you know because it's this kind of show. Nothing that bad is ever going to happen. There's one episode in particular where they bring back a little girl who has been placed there by the Goa'uld as like a bomb.
Yeah, she's got Naquadah in her blood or something.
Yes, she's got this alien element that will blow up and destroy their base. And what they end up doing is they can't take her through the Stargate because that'll explode her. So they take her into a nuclear silo and basically leave her and wait for her to explode. But then she doesn't explode and she goes and lives with it, and it's a very happy resolution to what is set up as a very brutal episode. And the episode is very good and very brutal, and it would have been like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but then they cop out the ending, and it just ruins the entire feel of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably because you're coming at this from a 20-teens viewpoint. Back then, that just wasn't a thing you did in TV to get that dark.
I guess. But then it kind of ruins the tone of the show, because there are other episodes. There's one where the whole team thinks Daniel Jackson's dead, and you don't see him until 3/4 through the episode.
Yeah.
But the whole way through, you're just like, obviously he's not dead. Just show us what's going on so we can figure out...
That's actually like a sort of a meme. A meme in the fandom of Stargate, because you'll find that there's an average of 2 to 3 episodes a season where the whole team thinks Daniel's dead. It's like the most. It's one of the most.
He's left behind a lot.
It's almost always Daniel who's the one where it's like, oh, he's probably dead.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just takes away the teeth of the show.
Yeah.
You know the show has no teeth, so there never really is any stakes.
I think that's fair, but
and it wouldn't be that big of a problem if they didn't always pretend that there were stakes to the show when there just aren't.
No, I get what you're saying. I sometimes feel that way, and I feel that way when I watch other shows as well. It's like they're creating all this drama, but it's like, well, I know that he's going to be fine. So can we get to it?
But yeah, I do have a lot of gripes with the show, but we have been talking for 35 minutes, and that would only happen with a show that has gotten me passionate enough to talk about. So it is a show that I did like. If I had to give season 1 a rating on its own, it wouldn't be that high. It would probably be maybe 6.5 or 7.
But you can sort of
six-ish,
see the potential.
But there is definitely potential for this to become, and I'm going to keep watching. There's definitely potential for it to be a good show, for sure. So I would agree with this recommendation.
Sweet.
Alright, so thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Media MD with Reuben and Elliot. That's our subtitle now. It's canon. So we have a podcast, which is Media MD... What is it? MediaMDpodcast@gmail.com.
We have a podcast. That's what you're listening to.
Yep.
But we also have an email.
We have an email. That's MediaMDpodcast@gmail.com. So if you want to get in contact with us, tell us things that we should be watching, or tell us about things that we got wrong when we were talking about different whatevers, email us there. Next fortnight, we'll be taking a look at the DC animated show Young Justice. So tune in to check that out.